Over the weekend at MagicCon Minneapolis, we saw more previews, more reveals, more spoilers, more preview cards, because it never ends. And I say this all the time about perpetual hype, but I was excited to tune into the YouTube VOD after the fact and see this stuff. But it is funny that we got Aftermath spoilers literally last week, like midweek, and here we are with more. It never ever ends. This is how Magic is now, and if you don't like it, it's probably not the Magic that you once loved when you were younger. There was a whole lot of stuff, including like new commanders and things that I might talk about in another video, or I might not, because I'm not going to talk about it until next week. It's my birthday this week, and I'm sick, so I'm not going to be working anywhere near as much as I normally would. Maybe I'll talk about it next week. The one that I had to sit down and talk about today, though, was the ring, or at least the temptation of the ring and the mechanic around it. So in today's video, I'm going to unpack this. This is the front and the back side of the emblem or rules reminder card. Yeah, it's a lot of text. That's why I want to do a video on it and talk about that. And talk all about that in today's video, so strap in. If you're looking to pre-order or buy cards from the Lord of the Rings expansion, you can do that via CoolStuffInc.com. 5% off your first order when you use the code KENOBI at checkout. I say first order off all your orders. Use the link in the description below. And do you need to buy a playmat? Here's an ad for my playmat. Watch it, you prick.
Playmats. We all have them. And we all love them. But have you ever had one with a handsome man dressed as a guardian of Thraben on it? What if he is flanked by cute dogs, defending the city's milk supply from the evil clutches of Neddeggers? Now is your chance with PleasantKenobi's new merchandise. The FDA has told me I can't say that this playmat will enlarge your penis, but I think I'm allowed to say it might make you friends with the children of the forest.
Oh no, not again.
The FDA wouldn't return my emails about little birds and mammals coming to sing with you, so fuck it. Become Snow White today and befriend all of the woodland animals with PleasantKenobi's new playmat. Available in standard or with a foiled out signature and paw prints. Pick up yours in the link below. Only available until late May and explicitly not guaranteed to engorge your cock. It may or may not attract squirrels, rabbits, and tiny birds for sing-along adventures. Buy yours today!
Tales of Middle-earth will land on June 23rd. That's when it fully releases. It's a Magic the Gathering set that will go directly into Modern, which is a completely new thing they've never done before, outside of Horizons. I say completely new, I guess that makes it not completely new. But what I mean is we've never seen a supplementary set like this that isn't aimed at Modern and discussing Modern and being framed as Modern with the word Modern in the title. There is an argument and a discussion around whether they should do this all the time anyway, because it rotates a non-rotating format, but also as it's not aimed at Modern, it may not be Modern power level, but at that point, why are you putting it into Modern? I've talked about this at length, let's not go into that here. It's a Universes Beyond product, which means you're going to have these triangular emblems, these triangular holographic stamps at the bottom of the cards, which tells you that the set is not an official Magic canon set, but it is legal in some Magic sets. Magic is a confusing mess these days. It will not be standard legal, it will be draftable, which is a weird thing to say about a booster product, but that's also part of Magic's weirdness right now with Aftermath being a non-draftable set. And it's going to feature a load of Lord of the Rings themed mechanics and flavour, and the main one is the temptation of the ring. The ring tempting you is a mechanic that we hadn't seen up until this weekend, but we had seen cards that triggered it. So for example, Sam Wise the Stout-Hearted said, whenever he enters the battlefield, you up to one target permanent card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn, and return it to your hand. Then the ring tempts you. So it's a 2/1 for 2 mana with flash that returns a card that's died this turn into your hand, and then it tempts you. And people were assuming that temptation might have a negative downside, because the ring in Lord of the Rings, if you've not seen the movies or read the books, it's not all roses but and rainbows when you wear or carry or are tempted by the fucking powered dark ring of Sauron's bumhole. Frodo as well, depicted here in this rare version for Frodo Sauron's Bane, has 2 abilities. One that turns into a halfling scout with base power 2, 3 and lifelink, and the second ability that if it's a scout already it becomes a halfling rogue and gains non-hit ability whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game if the ring has tempted you 4 or more times this game, otherwise the ring tempts you. Again, at this point we didn't know how strong this 1-drop was because we didn't know what the ring temptation did, and there was an assumption that there'd be a downside. So people are also aware that multiple legendaries in this set are going to have multiple versions of themselves at different rarities. So in this case I've just shown you the uncommon Samwise and the rare Frodo. We've also seen the uncommon Frodo here, which I'll show on screen now, Frodo Baggins, which is a 1/3, so it's got more toughness than the later one, maybe depicting his his physical erosion and ill health because of the ring, which I think is quite cool. And this one says, whenever Frodo Baggins or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, the ring tempts you, and as long as Frodo is your ring bearer, it must be blocked if able. I'll unpack all of that now with whatever the ring means. So, let's talk about the ring tempting you. As the ring tempts you, you get an emblem named the ring, if you don't have one. Then that emblem gains its next ability and you choose a creature that you control to become or remain your ring bearer. Now, bearing in mind, that was like a pun, this ring is not the One Ring. There is a weird and bizarre circumstance where the One Ring itself, the central ring that controls all the others in the darkness behind them, and all that shit, doesn't actually tempt you. Now, if you've seen Lord of the Rings or read Lord of the Rings, you'll know that this tempts everyone. Gollum is an absolute fucking mess for holding onto this thing. Bilbo becomes a bit of a bastard in his old age because of it at points, and has to, under Gandalf's tutelage, leave the ring. Frodo struggles with it. The whole point is that halflings are better at dealing with the temptation than most, as we see throughout Lord of the Rings. This thing does tempt you, but the temptation mechanic is nowhere to be seen on this. I'll unpack that more after we've gone through the full rules. So when the ring tempts you, you get to basically trigger and create this emblem. You choose a creature you control to become the ring bearer, and then we enable this first pip, the first level of the ring. The ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So essentially, a creature of yours that you control becomes legendary if it's not already, or remains legendary if it already is, and then it gains the ability Skulk, where a creature with greater power cannot block it. So it's kind of that evasive, turning invisible that we see when Frodo dons the ring in the movie. I'm going to mention the movie more, by the way. I've never read the actual books. Next time you get tempted, whenever your ring bearer attacks, draw a card and discard a card, so you get to loot, essentially. And then the next time you gain, whenever your ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature controls sacrifice at end of combat, so you edict anything that blocks your ring bearer, which means it always trades with the creature. And then lastly, whenever your ring bearer does combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life, meaning in a multiplayer game, this pings all opponents. So think about Commander there. Now, important points. You aren't going through this like a dungeon or initiative, which makes it actually a little bit more difficult to grok it initially if you are aware and used to playing with those mechanics. Each of these abilities is gained and never lost as part of the ring bearer emblem. Now, some important bullet points on the back end of this rules reminder card that everyone's going to want to keep to hand. It says the ring can tempt you even if you don't control a creature. So you can still tick up the ring temptation meter to power up when you finally have a creature, even if you don't have one at the time. The ring gains its abilities in order from top to bottom. Once it gains an ability, it has the ability for the rest of the game. Like I said, you don't lose these. Each time the ring tempts you, you must choose a creature if you control one. You can't choose not to create a ring bearer. Each player can have only one emblem named the ring and only one ring bearer at a time. So you can't have multiple ring emblems and you can't have multiple ring bearers. That's pretty intuitive. One point I keep seeing people make is how wordy all of this is. And I must say, having a double-sided emblem rules card in your packs to explain the base premise, the flow of it, and the additional information. And then beyond that, of course, there will be extra notes on this in the comprehensive rule document that you can find online. It does feel like this is way too wordy, to the point that it's hard to grok and understand it initially. It probably will be a lot easier to play with, but I think simplicity is something they should strive for. It's a funny moment when they announced all this on the panel. Like, people were cheering for the Sliver card and the Eldrazi card when they showed them off from the Commander decks for Commander Masters, and Lord of the Rings itself also got an audible cheer. When they showed this on screen, and this poor Wizards employee had to explain this long-windedly to the audience, there was just stunned silence where people were reading and processing on the spot, and probably struggling to do so. This is a lot of text to take in. If you are a new player 5 years from now and someone casts the ring tempts you and they pull this out and they put it down, you have to explain it shorthand like I tried to do in today's video. This probably could be simpler somehow. I'm not a game designer, I don't know exactly how, but it feels like a lot of words to do reasonably little. So what does this mean? How does this play? Well, of course, before we play with it, it's always hard to say. Sometimes you will over-evaluate or under-evaluate things. That's why everyone said, like, Fable of the Mirror Breaker was okay, like I did during previous season. Turns out it's one of the best enchantments they've ever printed. But this is essentially, as far as I can understand it, an equipment that is uninteractable as far as itself is concerned. Imagine the ring is an equipment that sits in your command zone, or in the emblem zone if you want to move away from using the commander language, but it is the command zone, and it can never be targeted with a removal spell. It equips to your creatures with an equip cost of Get Tempted. So cast the spell or trigger an ability that would say Tempt with the ring. And then the interaction point happens. The opponent can kill your creature that is the ring bearer, much like in Lord of the Rings. The ring itself is very difficult to destroy outside of Mount Doom, but your creature carrying it can be caught, captured, tortured, and killed, as we see in the movies. I say that. Is there a ring bearer that gets caught and killed? I'm making that shit up. It is comparable to Dungeons and the Initiative, and to an extent Experience, because you're gaining something that can't be reset and can't be interacted with, and you have in the sense of Experience, you need another creature to enable it, something to say what your experience counters do. In this case, we need other cards that tempt you to equip the Ring Bearer. It's like Initiative in the dungeon because you're getting extra value in a zone that your opponent can't stop, but they can, I guess, because they can interact with the cards you were casting and say tempt with the ring. People are wondering if this is as good as Initiative, which recently absolutely dominated both Pauper and Legacy and resulted in some bans. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say no, it just isn't as good as Initiative. The thing that makes Initiative so good is that once you start the train, it ticks up every upkeep. All you have to do is not get hit to keep going. The ring itself requires you to have a creature to keep that creature around, and if that creature dies, you then got to tempt yourself again to carry on the value train of what the ring brings. And what the ring brings is pretty good. The extra evasion, the extra card quality, the extra killing a creature if it gets blocked, and then like pinging your opponent for 3, basically giving the creature a virtual extra 3 power when connecting with an opponent, is all reasonable considering this can just sit around in a zone uninteracted with and then be triggered again, especially if the creatures you're playing trigger themselves. Both versions of Frodo that we've seen so far, both the uncommon and the rare one, both tempt on their own. So really you don't need to play anything to synergize with them. Sauron the Necromancer, which is the rare version from, I believe, from the Commander decks, not from the main set, but I could be wrong there. I might have misheard during the presentation. This thing is a 4/4 with menace that says whenever Sauron the Necromancer attacks, exile target creature card from your graveyard. Create a tapped attacking token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 3/3 black wraith with menace. At the beginning of the next end step, exile that token unless Sauron is the ring bearer. This card is a payoff for being a ring bearer, for making Sauron the ring bearer, but you don't have any way to actually do that on the card itself. It's not a self-contained engine. Both the Frodos, which have arguably less powerful effects, although to be fair, Frodo Sauron's Bane says literally an opponent loses the game on it, so arguing that's not powerful would be dumb. But these cards themselves just enable the whole shenanigans and I hate that word, the whole ring bearer stuff anyway. So it feels reasonably powerful if enough good cards enable it. Will it see play in older formats where you might want to equip this equipment they can't destroy or equip this aura they can't interact with? I guess it would. Like, recently a patron of mine bought up Boggles. I don't think you're going to play or go out of your way to play Ring Temptation cards to power up your Boggles, but if there's an enchantment in green, white, or blue, or whatever colours Boggles is in the format you're playing it, Boggles being where you play a hexproof creature and put enchantments on it and beat your opponent's face to death. That's like, it's called Auras in Historic, I think, because there's actually no Boggles in Historic. Anyway, I don't think you're going to go out of your way to splash into this strategy to improve your Boggle deck, but I think if one aura has Temptations on it, then it may just be coincidentally something you end up playing. In many ways, just like Enter the Dungeon and Initiative, it all depends upon the card quality of the cards that do it. Call of the Ring is a 2-mana enchantment that tempts you at your upkeep, so you're always going to be leveling up that Ring Bearer ability, and whenever you choose a creature to become your Ring Bearer, you may pay 2 life and draw a card, so it's a card draw engine as well. I think this might be the best one we've seen so far. Whether it's playable in Legacy or something, I doubt it, but it seems pretty strong as far as the mechanic is concerned. I don't think this is going to really rock any world. I don't think it's as good as Initiative, but that said, Initiative never hit Modern, so this might be Modern's version of it if the cards are powerful enough to enable it. How do I feel about it flavorfully? Well, I guess the idea that this is an equipment that you cannot destroy or interact with is kind of on point for a ring that someone must carry. However, there are some really big flavor fails here. There is no perceivable downside to being tempted by the fucking Ring of Sauron. Like, why would you not just get tempted and power yourself up to be this little like Voltron mad little hobbit or whoever's carrying it and then fuck people up? There's no reason not to become tempted here on the emblem. People were saying perhaps a lot of the cards that tempt you have downside, and maybe they do at common and uncommon, but the ones we're being shown so far, like Uncommon Frodo, and like the Black Enchantment, the Ring's Temptation, or whatever it's called, no. These actually have almost entirely upside. There is no downside to carrying a ring that turns people into things like Gollum. Beyond that, everyone can also have a ring bearer. So in a game of Commander, there can be 4 ring bearers running around, being powered up and being protected by the power of the ring, which also seems very strange. It makes me wonder why the hell the Ring Temptation thing isn't an escalation that someone can take from you. Like with the Initiative, you can steal it by dealing combat damage. Like with the Monarch as another effect outside the game, because there's so many of these fucking things now, you can take break it by dealing combat damage. And the great thing about the Monarch, and to a lesser extent Initiative, is that those mechanics really incentivize people swinging. I've played with newer players recently in my game style who just do not attack each other, and it really stretches a game of Commander out to a point that it's not very fun. I like mechanics that encourage you to attack each other. The ring doesn't do that other than powering up an attacker, I guess, which seems like the polar opposite of those two mechanics. I'd love to see it in practice, playing with newer players to see how they react to powering up a creature as a ring bearer and whether they attack with it or not. But it's weird that I can't kill the ring bearer with the target spell and gain possession of the ring that way. Like, if an effect would destroy a ring bearer, surely you should just gain the emblem or move the emblem to you, much like the Monarch does. So it's all power up, it's all upside, if a little bit weaker than, say, Initiative. The other element that really, I don't know if it bugs me, but it's something that I'm very aware of, is that we just keep getting more mechanics that float outside the game. From attractions to the ring, to Monarch, to Initiative, to dungeons. Like, for the longest time, we had just emblems from Planeswalkers, then we got experience. And then over the last 3 to 4 years, we've got two of these every year, I think it is. I haven't checked the exact maths, but there's a lot of these outside the game emblem effects, even showing up in stuff like Infinity and here, they're going straight into Modern. Infinity going to Modern into Legacy, but it's still a draftable set outside of Commander. And I don't think this is inherently a terrible thing. Like, new design space is great for creating a feel of a certain world or a certain gameplay dynamic. The idea that you are all clamoring to get the ring in a game of Lord of the Rings makes sense. Although you can't gain the ring, you just all gain the ring. There's issues around everyone having access to the ring that I don't think makes it feel like Lord of the Ring. But I get that Magic is this fantastic game system that can gain these extra, like, outside the game rules or additional rule levels, or layers, should I say, to use the term that's already used elsewhere, that then makes Magic feel like another version of something else. Like, telling the stories of the property we're engaging with. That was something they mentioned on the panel, that the Doctor Who decks feel like you're playing out episodes, how sagas feel like they're bringing out stories. I like that a lot. But I do have to ask the question, how often do we need effects that happen outside the game? Is it in some ways falling back on not wanting to engage with the cards themselves and create these areas that are like separate, this thing in the command zone where we get a ring, a extra deck, some stickers too while we're at it, the Monarchy, the fucking Initiative, like, it feels not lazy, but it feels like we are coming to this well more and more. Perhaps the actual evidence, if you looked at the dates between them, isn't as often as I am saying it is, but it feels pretty regular, and I wonder if it's just going to feel... It already feels a bit overloaded. There is some absolute nonsense that can happen in a Commander game. I guess ultimately that's Commander, it doesn't really matter, but it still kind of bugs me a little bit. I think this one is particularly egregious because, like Dungeons, everyone can be in them. I mean, what will ultimately happen is most people won't be in them. A year out from the Lord of the Rings set, most people probably won't be playing that many Lord of the Rings cards in their decks. That's what always happens, right? You just have the flavour of the month and then we move on, especially in the casual communities like Commander. Ultimately, the ring is powerful-ish. I'm going to give it a B for power level, but for flavour, it just doesn't do it for me. I was very excited for the Lord of the Rings set, especially if the slam dunk of what Warhammer was, and how much I liked Battle for Baldur's Gate as well. I think they've been doing pretty good with their outside properties and making them feel good in-game. And this ring just feels like a fail to me. I can't believe the One Ring itself, here's the crowning achievement of all that, it doesn't even fucking tempt you. How can the One Ring have no temptation on it other than them avoiding the set mechanics they wanted to stand on its own 10 years from now when people forget about this mechanic? Famously, the ring doesn't do anything to you. It's just all upside. It never had a negative effect on anyone in Middle-earth. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let me know if you are picking up any of my playmats as well. Hope you've enjoyed this rundown of how the ring works, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.